we're going to do 2 problems together, 2 problems on your own, and then you work on the homework. Like, it's pretty chill. So we're going to work on solving. So first things first, when I say solve something, what does it mean? What am I asking you to do? What does it mean? What you got, Amber? Simplify, definitely a part of it. What is my goal? What do I want to have? What is a solution? A few different ways to word it. X equals. Exactly what was in my head. I want to get to an x equals. X equals blank. Or y equals or z equals or whatever your variable is. I want to know what it equals. That is my solution. So looking at number 1 here, what are we going to do to solve this? How do I solve it? Subtract both sides by 7. Minus 7 on both sides. That's going to give me 3x equals negative 2. I'm good at mathing. Woohoo, go me. All right, I don't have x by itself yet. So what do? Divide by 3. So then the 3's cancel out, and we're left with just x on one side. There we go. Equals, oh look, I have my x equals, and it's whatever is on the right side, negative 2/3. That's my solution. So a solution has x equals. When we have something that's like a linear function like this, a line, an x, just x by itself, we're going to have one function or one solution. When we have something like an x squared, how many solutions could we have? Remember? 2. Do we have to have 2 solutions? No. We could have one solution. We could have no solutions. So it's a matter of being careful and being intentional about how we solve stuff. Okay, so let's look at number 2. A couple of ways to go about it. What's your instinct first? Yeah, you can add both sides by 5. You can solve it exactly the same kind of way. So if we add 5 to both sides and start working towards getting my x squared by itself, 3x squared equals 12. Divide by 3. They like 3's in this one, huh? Divide both sides by 3. Boop. X squared equals 4. Is x squared the same thing as x? Nope. So we got to get down to what x is. I want to know what x equals. We square root. Absolutely valid. You can square root both sides, which means x is what? Ah, good catch. X equals 2 or x equals negative 2. Because when we take the square root of something, we can't tell whether it was positive or negative. You can also do it as, if we're feeling super duper lazy, the plus or minus 2. Totally fine. 100% valid. They mean exactly the same thing. Sometimes this works better for our brain. Sometimes this works better for our brain. And whichever one works better for your brain is fine with me. We will occasionally see this every now and then. I wonder where. We will get into that at some point later. Okay, so we're going to get back into this method of solving, working through how to solve stuff, trying to remember how to solve stuff. And we can solve, especially these quadratics, with things like factoring. We can solve with the square roots like we did here. We can do the quadratic formula if we remember how to do that. All that jazz. So I want you guys to work together. Work with a friend, work with a partner, work with a neighbor, work with an enemy, though I don't recommend that one. It's not super conductive. But work on 3 and 4. See if you can figure out how to solve them. Okay? Honestly, you might start with 4. 3 is probably the hardest. I don't remember. So work on those. See if you can solve those. See what we come up with. Just trying to remember if 4 works. I didn't actually write 4 down. Okay, so work together and see what we can get. Ugh, both of those are kind of gross. Ew, yeah, both 3 and 4 are gross. I don't like either one of those. Neither one of those is factorable. See if we can figure out what to do. Okay, let's look at 3 together. So this one's number 3. So I always recommend with something like this trying to do factoring. Factoring is probably going to be our easiest of options. Think back to our kind of red around the room activity thing that we did way at the beginning. But if we look at that and we try and factor it, our a times c, we get negative 9 on the top and a positive 42. And there's not a pair of numbers that multiplies to be negative 9 and adds to be positive 42. If we did it backwards, I think it works, but that's not going to work. So this doesn't factorable, not factorable. So that doesn't work. We can't just like start doing things here. Our other options are to solve with completing the square. That lets us use the square root stuff like we did on the previous one. That would be using stuff like we did with the tiles. Totally doable. Gross, but doable. Yes, dear.
I don't know if it works, but do you have another idea?
Yeah, what's your other idea?
Basically my other idea is squaring -9 with x squared.
Squaring negative 9 with x squared. Okay. It's possible. Let's see what you got.
-3 and +3.
Oh, you're trying to like difference to square it, kind of? Yeah, that would, there are going to be some times when that could work, but not every time. Easter.
Can you put it in that?
And absolutely, yeah, that was going to be my other option to say. Complete the square or quadratic formula are going to be our other options here. So I always recommend starting with factoring. If you have an x in the middle, we're not going to be able to just hop hop it to square roots like we did on the first one. But you can use either one of these. These ones will work every time. Sometimes this one's going to be grosser, even than the quadratic formula. But let's go through the quadratic formula because it's been a hot minute. It uses our standard form that y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So our first thing we need to do is we need to find a, b, and c. What is my a value? 1. What is my b value? 42. And what is my c value? C is negative 9. And you straight up plug them in up here. X equals the opposite of b, negative 42, plus or minus the square root of b, 42 squared, that's 2, minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. I always, oh, that is tiny. Holy cow. I'm going to zoom it in so you can actually see what I wrote. Sorry, I had zoomed in like real far on the screen. I always color code. It makes it really easy to make sure I got all the stuff in the right places. I always have color pencils, markers, highlighters, whatever you need. If you need them, if you want them, I got them. Like, seriously, my cabinet's full of stuff. You don't have to. It's not a math thing. It's a my brain thing. And this, like, you can take and substitute these into the calculator. Like, you can just straight up type them in the calculator. All you're going to have to do is split this up. 1 is plus, 1 is minus. And you can straight up type them in the calculators. The yellow calculators will do it. Because these ones are, again, kind of gross. I don't like that I had to do 3 and 4 on your own. Like, ew, why did I make that choice? Ew. I was a jerk when I wrote this. I'm sorry. If you're going to do the completing the square, that's where we're looking for whatever value makes the square perfect. Where we take our x squared and we take our 42x and split it exactly evenly. So it's the 21x and 21x. That guy, we did it before with the tiles up on the board. You can absolutely do that. It's probably harder, but if you like the square root stuff, that's a valid strategy.
So
Okay.
we put it in calculators and just do plus or minus.
Well, you're gonna have to do both. So let me grab my calculator and I can show you. Turn that off, go this way, this one. All right, let me grab my calculator and we can actually type it in and I'll show you. Just gotta get my calculator to open. That one? Maybe. It'll work. Yay! All right. So when you're typing one of these guys in, I recommend just straight up starting out with, I have a fraction. On the top of my fraction, we're gonna have our negative, make sure you use the negative sign down here, 42. We're gonna do plus to start with. Square root, we hit the green button on the top left and then hit the x squared button that gives us our square root. I always substitute things in parentheses because it makes sure we don't have sign issues. So we're gonna put our 42 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 9 all over 2 times 1. And it'll spit out 2.13 blah, 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 blah. So that's one of our solutions, is that x equals 2.13. 0.213. Negative 9. Minus 9. You drop the negative sign inside your radical.
Oh, I didn't put negative.
You put positive 9. Right here. Go. And then retype it. Insert. There you go. All right. So cool thing about these calculators is instead of having to retype the whole thing in for the minus, if I hit the arrow up onto that line and hit enter, it re-enters it for me, and all I have to do is back till I get to that plus, switch it to a minus, and off we go.
And put both these on.
Yep, those are both of our solutions. They're gross, but they're both our solutions. So, and then our other one is x equals negative 42.213. So you can absolutely retype it 100%, valid. You can also use the calculator cheat code and go back. You just hit like our up arrow until it's highlighting it and hit enter, and then it retypes it in exactly as it was. And you can arrow through it, you can change stuff, like we say, oh shoot, I meant for that to be a 2, because I typed it in wrong. We can go back and change it. That's not an answer, that was just me being crazy. And we're like, oh shoot, I entered it right the first time. I can go back and grab that. So these calculators are super awesome and super helpful for that. Okay, the yellow calculators will do that. Your phone calculator, you have to do it in chunks. Do the part under the square root it, then do your adding and subtracting. Because the phone calculator is not great at order of operations, but if you've got a calculator that can do the fractions that look like fractions, you're good to go.
Phone calculator.
Huh?
Phone calculator is the hardest thing.
The phone calculator is not the best. It exists and it's there, and I love that we have calculators in our pockets because then we don't have to do math timetables. Because we have calculators that live in our pockets, which is what we were told, you never carry your calculator with you. You have to be able to do these in your head really fast in the grocery store. Yeah, no, there's a calculator that lives in my pocket now. You don't gotta do timetable tests. Okay, so we have the tools at our disposal. Being able to know how to use them is the key. Okay? So I encourage you to try number 4. It is a similar level of pleasant. So just to warn you, 4 is a similar level of pleasant as 3. Sorry, y'all are my guinea pigs because you're the first ones of the day that get this. And then our homework, 6B homework 1, also known as 6 homework 5, is page 104. It is a single question that I ask you to solve as many ways as you can. It is also on Canvas, but it is also, sorry, zooming in, page 104. I want you to solve it as many ways as you can. You can square things, you can square root things, we can multiply things out, we can factor things, there's lots of choices. Okay, so solve it as many different ways as you can. And that is the extent of what we're going to do today. We're just starting to talk about this solving stuff.
I just see like 4 branches fall.
Huh?
I just see like 4 branches fall.
Yeah, it's gusty. It's gusty. I'm gonna lock that window so it don't like blow back open because that would be intense.
I thought the window was only open.
It was open. It blew itself closed. And there's like a latch that locks it shut.
But the window's only open that way, right?
Yeah, they only open out. So that's what I'm saying. If it pulls itself open, that's a whole lot. Was that a bird? I think it was a leaf. It just sounded like it hit the window. I think it's just the window being weird. But yeah, it's a little gusty out there today.